Welcome back to Barn Built Beaters. In the last episode, we notched the frame so the bed can sit flush on top of the frame rails and hide that frame up inside the body so nobody sees it. What I thought we would be doing in this episode is boxing in these sections and building front body mounts. But I quickly found out while trying to use the tools I already had that they just weren't going to work. Here in front of me, we have our brand new Wen benchtop horizontal bandsaw to cut metal. Ideally, I wanted a vertical benchtop bandsaw, but unfortunately, they don't sell them to use for metal, only wood. The difference being that the saw blade rotates roughly 10 times faster to cut wood than it is to cut metal. In this video, I will show you how to turn a benchtop horizontal bandsaw into a vertical bandsaw. Don't worry, you can quickly switch between the two in less than a minute. Before we get started, be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. In front of me, you see the two pieces that you need. A bracket to keep the saw at 90 degrees and the tabletop to push material through the saw blade. In this video, I will show you how to make this bracket and also how to make the tabletop. Since we want this saw to be used both in the horizontal position as well as the vertical position, we will want to modify the trigger. Now note, this will probably void your warranty and it also makes the saw a little bit more dangerous, but there's also a redundancy. You have an on-off button over here and you have the trigger right here. So you have to turn it on the machine and pull the trigger to actually get the saw blade to move. Now, most vertical bandsaws, you only have an on-off switch, or at least the ones I've used. So to me, it is no more dangerous than a vertical bandsaw, but please do this under your own discretion. There's a couple different ways to disable this handle trigger. The first being the easiest. Take a zip tie, put it through here, cinch it down, and that holds the handle trigger closed. The second method is pretty much identical, but it's a little bit more involved. You take out the few screws here, separate the handle, put a zip tie around the button trigger, and put it all back together. That way it hides the zip tie, which is the method I'm gonna go with. The third method is, once again, take apart the handle, cut the wires, splice them together, but that method is the most intrusive. Now, with it zip tied shut, when you turn it on, the saw comes on. We can clip this off and put it back together. Right now, the saw is in its horizontal position, and if we lift up, it hits a hard stop because of the set screw back here, which hits this bracket, preventing it from going to 90 degrees. Our first step would be to remove that, and that allows us to get to 90 degrees and beyond. We've just removed the set screw and now we can get our saw into the 90-degree position, but it can also go past. What we're going to have to do is where we took that set screw out, we will use that bolt hole location to make a bracket to keep the saw at 90 degrees and no further. To make your 90-degree bracket, we first need to make this weird shaped piece right here. To do so, you're going to find the center line of your bolt hole location where the set screw came out of and transfer it onto your piece of metal. Once that mark is transferred, you're going to drill through so that set screw can fit back through that hole and screw into the saw where we took it out of. With your piece of metal mounted to the saw, you're going to take something sharp, I use a multimeter lead, and follow the curvature of the saw. Once you scribe your line, you're going to remove this piece, cut it out, and you have the beginning of your bracket. Bolt your bracket back onto the saw and drill through the bracket and the saw and tap for an M6 bolt about an inch away from the existing hole. Adjust the saw so it stays in the 90-degree angle without you holding this. I did this by propping up the motor with scrap metal I had laying around. With your saw at 90 degrees, grab another piece of metal with a flat edge and put it against both the saw rotation point and against the bracket we just cut out. Take something and scribe where this flat piece of metal should be welded onto your bracket. Remove your bracket from the saw, place the steel you were just using against the scribe line and weld. Once the piece has finished cooling, bolt it back onto the saw, and now your saw should stay at 90 degrees. If you don't have a welder to make your 90-degree bracket, don't worry, there's another solution. You can get a rectangular piece of metal and bend it at a 90-degree angle and drill a hole close to the corner so your set screw can go through that hole and screw into the drilled screw hole that we made. We got that bracket all welded up, and now we're just waiting for it to cool down before we mount it to the machine to keep it at 90 degrees. While we wait, we can start working on the table portion of the vertical bandsaw. Here I have a 1/2 inch piece of metal. It's in a random shape, but it should work for our needs. We have some square stock. It's just, once again, scrap steel. It should work just fine for our needs, and this portion will go into the vise and hold the table upwards. So we can then take that square stock, we can cut it to size, and start welding up this portion as that bracket cools down. We got our 3 pieces cut. They range in size 7 inches, 4 inches, and 5 inches. I'm going to finish dressing up some of these sides, but this 7-inch piece goes down here. It gets clamped into the vise, nice and tight. Then the 4-inch piece will get welded to that one. And then this little 5-inch piece will then get welded here. Lastly, the table piece will sit on top, and we'll guide it through and cut a slot for the saw. Since my camera died and I wasn't ready to go inside yet, I decided to tack together the table. Here you see me final welding this together. Since I really enjoy welding, I decided to fully weld all the seams. This is for sure overkill, but I had fun doing it, and it's good practice to be both in and out of position while welding. I also tried walking the cup, and although it didn't turn out terrible, it wasn't camera worthy either. We had to cut a line down the center of the tabletop so the table extended past the saw. I made sure to mark out the center and slowly guide the saw through the tabletop. Afterwards, I took a Sawzall blade and opened the cut up slightly to prevent the saw blade rubbing, as the Sawzall blade is slightly thicker. Once that was done, I was ready to tack the tabletop together to the base and finish weld it. Again, you don't need a welder here either, but it makes your life easier. You could manage a way to bolt together a base. Although not as durable, you could also use wood for both the base and the tabletop and place some thin sheet metal on the top of the wood tabletop to easily push material through the saw. There you have it, the horizontal vertical bandsaw conversion. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and make sure you hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss my future videos. If you have any questions on the conversion, be sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them. See you in the next one.